Blue Lock episode 10 has finally aired, and it might just be the best episode yet. The last half just started. There is so much to talk about. We're heading into the best part of the game. So did the animation improve? What are the best and worst moments? And what is the community's reaction to this episode? On top of that, we got the first statement from the actual director of Blue Lock about season 2 and his thoughts on it. We'll be covering everything you need to know, so let's get into it. We had a lot today, so let's start off with episode 10 itself. This is the first look we're getting at the second half or the end of the game, the most important part because all the moments that happen in it. So going into this episode, a lot of people were very anxious to see what happens, and I gotta say, I think that this episode was fantastic, probably the best overall episode we've seen. Episode 10 picks up right where we left off and adapted a scene they left out in the previous episode, which I saw a lot of people talk about, so immediately we're starting off good. This episode was fully focused on Shido, but we did get a lot of highlights for some other characters, and I think that those were done good as well. This was mostly a game playing episode, so it was gonna require a lot of animation and movement, and so far Blue Lock hasn't had the best track record with that, especially when it comes to the goals. But in this episode, we of course got Shido's goal, and this was done very well. Everything from the OSTs, movement, build up, voice acting, all of it was very good. I gotta give a separate highlight for the art for this moment. I think this was done so good, even for the build up to it, like Shigiri trying to defend. The art even for that was very good. And then Shido himself, the art for that was amazing. He was actually drawn super well. The eyes are glowing. You got the demon wings, the shading on his character. We might be eating as good as Igaguri. There was actually some movement for this goal as well, which is the first time we're seeing movement for a Shido goal, so that was super nice. We also can't forget Shido's goal celebration. They actually kept his signature line in. If I'm being honest, I thought they were gonna censor it, so that's a plus. Shido's moment was very reminiscent of the Nagi goal, and that was some of the best we've got from this season, so I'm happy to see that they did it justice. I do want to know what goal you guys thought was personally better between Nagi and Shido's. I know that's a really huge debate right now. Now, personally, I think I'm still gonna go with Nagi because the build-up for that was absolutely insane, but that doesn't take anything away from Shido. And even though I think Nagi's goal was individually better, I still think this episode was overall better than anything else we've seen, because it wasn't just Shido getting his highlight. We get a lot of other moments like Shigiri running, Nico doing his block and analyzing, as well as Hiyori and Ryo's moments. Most of it was done very good. OSTs for it were absolutely perfect during those moments, but I think Ryo's moment specifically with his chameleon defense was adapted super well. So all of that makes for a very good episode. However, even though we got a lot of moments, and I think this is the best episode we've gotten so far, that isn't really too high of a bar. Like, even though it is the best episode we've gotten, there's no doubt about it, it's not really saying much. It's far from perfect because we still have the PNG animations, which I'll go over in a second, but you gotta give credit when credit is due. This is a step in the right direction, and I'm so glad that they're taking it. There was definitely improvements this episode than any other episode that we've gotten so far, and the improvements was just adding movement to the goals, and, you know, make a character that runs actually run, because even with those small quality of life improvements, it really helped with the anime and the enjoyability of it, which makes it the best episode so far. It makes you think that if this season was adapted like this the whole time, how much better it could have been, because even though there isn't that much improvements, it still already looks so much better than the other episodes we got. And honestly, the movement is still not even on the level of season 1. That's a huge what if. Like, imagine we got the season 1 movement with the art of season 2. I think we'd be jumping for joy. It's not perfect, but considering what we got, this is definitely the quote-unquote best of the worst from the episodes we got. But even though it was the best, it still doesn't come without its faults though. There are still some moments in the animation that looked very odd, which is what I was talking about earlier. For example, Shido's first shot attempt where he got blocked by Nico. Most of it was just a still frame, which can kind of get confusing considering he's just jumping and floating in the air. In fact, we didn't even see the jump. And then when Hiyori's doing his passes, Dairai Miroku just comes in sliding every time. Most of it is just stills. It's actually kind of funny at this point, but even though there were some odd moments, I would say for this episode specifically, it had the least amount of odd moments. So overall, I would say this is the best episode we've gotten for a game playing episode. Because if you're straight comparing the best and worst moments, you have a lot of good moments and then a couple of bad moments for this episode. Unlike other episodes like episode 2, for example, you had a lot of bad moments and not that many good moments. In fact, no good moments. So this episode, I think it definitely improved in that aspect. But we still got a lot left to talk about. What are the best and worst moments? What is the community's reaction to this episode? And of course, the news from the season 2 director. Hopping into the best moment, I gotta say it was definitely Shido's goal. I think they did this scene absolutely absolutely justice, but we've already talked about it so much. You can nitpick and say they didn't show the ball moving fully or anything like that, which it didn't, but still overall this goal was fantastic. Another few things I want to highlight though would be Ryo's chameleon defense, as well as the OST choice for this episode was absolutely spot on. Especially during Hiyori's aura moment, the OST was a symphony, and whenever someone had their moment, it was specific OSTs playing and not just one continuous one. Not gonna lie, that one episode where they kept playing the Mario Kart beat really gave everyone PTSD with the OSTs, so it's good to see that they're not making that mistake again. But since we went over the best part, we of course have to go over the worst part of this episode as well. And even though there wasn't that much, considering it's the best episode we've gotten, I would say it's still the animation. It's somehow both the best and worst moments of this episode, because we can't fully ignore that animation. The first half was kind of full of it. Again, it was still infinitely better than anything that we had before. We just had to pick a worst moment. All right, what you guys have been waiting for. What is the community's reaction to this episode? What do people think of episode 10? And straight away, I think there was a lot more positive feedback. A lot of people were happy about this episode, and for good reason. Shido's goal really won everyone over. It was huge on social media. I saw people saying that this was the best goal so far, even over the Nagi one, as well as just overall praise. I think a lot of people were in agreement that this was the best episode we've seen, considering all the hype moments that we got. A lot of praise for Chigiri's running and then Ryo's defense. Both of those, I think, exceeded people's expectations, especially considering the expectation and bar for Chigiri was so low at this point. It's just a PNG moving. But overall, it was very good. Of course, this was met with a lot of complaints still about the first half of the episode because of the animation and use of CGI. That was mainly the negative feedback for this episode, the hard use of CGI. Honestly, when I watched it, it wasn't too noticeable, but a lot of people were talking about how much there was. Overall, this episode received a lot of positive feedback, and I think people are starting to gain hope for these last couple of episodes because Nagi's goal was good, Shido's goal was good, and this was the best episode we've gotten so far. So we'll just have to wait and find out if it actually becomes better or not. There are 4 more episodes, which means 3 more weeks left of season 2, because in the last week, both of the last episodes are airing at the same time, if you didn't know that already. Lastly, we got some more news about season 2 itself. BLUELOCK's director came out and did an interview for the first time and actually addressed the animation problem. Even though it was a whole interview, I'm gonna concise it down and give you guys what you want to know. The SparkNotes summary, basically, about his thoughts on the animation. Ryoya Arisawa was the director that answered all these questions. There was 2 important major parts though. One of them was a question asking if he was happy with the anime adaptation, and he basically said that they were far from satisfied with the adaptation for season 2. And even though this is a good response, his response was more focused on talking about how BLUELOCK is all about ego and not being satisfied, kind of avoiding the question of why he isn't satisfied, which is kind of a funny answer. He somehow related it to BLUELOCK. He quite literally just said they are egoist and are striving to be better. Very interesting answer. And then the most important one, there was a question directly asking about the animation change from season 1 to season 2, and his answer was that BLUELOCK is now battling on a grand stage and have enhanced aspects such as aura effects, monitor work, and imagery sequences. So to translate it for y'all, we basically got a whole lot of nothing from this answer. There was nothing actually addressing the PNGs or stills or CGI usage, any of the actual problems throughout the season. There was no direct answer of why season 1 changed from season 2. They just more talked about how it's now on a grander stage. Let's be honest though, of course they're not gonna address it or anything. No director is purposely gonna talk bad about the anime or studio, so I can't blame him for giving the most PR basic answers. However, it was the first time he actually addressed the animation, so I wanted to highlight that and his answers. Was it the answers that we wanted? Not really. It was kind of avoiding the question, but it's fine. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. Just catching you up on episode 10 and everything related to it. I'll see y'all in the next one.